In this video I demonstrate how to create edit pages for your iBuySpy user controls. So in this video we're going to pick up where we left off from the previous video. If you recall, we created a Tell a Friend user control, and now we want to create the actual page that manages the text of the email message that gets sent out. So let's take a look first of all at our Tell a Friend control in review. Let's look at the HTML view of it. You recall that once we use this portal control, it gives us the desktop module title. One of the things we did was we edited the edit text. So at the very top it'll say, if you're logged in as an administrator or somebody has rights to change the control, edit the control, we made that text say edit mail message. And then we also placed an edit URL, tellafriend.aspx, as opposed to our ASCX, our actual user control. I think the convention is edit tell a friend, but I didn't. Well, let's go ahead and change that right now. Edit tell a friend. So we'll need to create a page, edit tell a friend, within our application so that we can change the text message of the mail that goes out. So to see this in action, let's go ahead and run our application quickly. Log in as guest, which has administrator rights and therefore the rights to make edits to this control. And notice here how we have this edit message link that comes up. That's as a result of the text that we typed in the desktop module title. If I hover my mouse cursor over it, it says edit tell a friend.aspx and the ID is 33. The ID represents the module so that we can specify a different mail message depending on where this Tell a Friend control is used in our site. We're not going to do that. We're not going to make it specific to the ID, but you can definitely add that functionality. So let's go ahead and stop it down and add our edit desktop module. I'm sorry, edit tellafriend.aspx. I'm just going to copy this and then go to this folder here, desktop modules, and select add a new item, and we will add a web form which we'll go ahead and paste in edit tellafriend.aspx. Now in the previous video I suggested that we would store the mail message in the web.config. I said that without investigating how to do that. That's a little easier said than done. So I've decided to back off that and create a settings table within my database that will hold any type of settings that we need to make across the entire application. I could just as easily use an XML file for this purpose, or more specifically the web.config file if I wanted to do a little extra work. But that's not really what I'm trying to illustrate here. What I want to show you is how to create a page that will edit information, not necessarily how to go through the exercise of configuring the web.config programmatically. So let's go to the portal database, and in my list of tables I'm going to add a new one called settings. And I'm going to call this setting ID. This will be an integer, and I'll also make it a key and an identity. And we'll just use something very easy, setting name, and we'll make this nvarchar 50, and then setting value, which will make this just varchar, and we'll make it 4000. And we'll go ahead and save that and call it settings. Now one of the conventions that they use in iBuySpy is to actually create a component that encapsulates the functionality of connecting to the database and so forth. So we're going to create a new class called, or a component called settingsdb.cs. Let's go add new item. I'm going to go down to component, Alright, through the magic of video, I've already taken the liberty of adding two methods that will allow me, first of all, to get a single setting, and then also to update, let's call this update setting. And I try to follow the conventions that they used in the rest of the classes. Some of the names I've used differently, like I prefer to preface my stored procs with SP and sometimes SP underscore. And they did not. So there might be some different naming conventions. And to go along with these, I created two stored procedures. You can see where mine are. They're the two that have the SP. You can name them anything you want. But essentially, the get single accepts in a setting name, and it retrieves that row from the settings table in the database. And the other one actually does an update. Settings update, and we use two values, set the value where the name equals the name that's been passed in. So I would refer you, I'm not going to take a look at all the code in this component because that's not really what we're trying to get at here. But I would recommend that you take a look at the actual code when I include it with this video. So now we get to move on to the fun part where we get to the Visual Designer surface for our edit telefriend.aspx. And here we're just going to do some really simple things like, we're going to drag and drop a label, a text box, and a button. And we'll do this, and also we'll want to include one other thing here. And what I typically do is I'll take a look at one of the other edit pages that were created. Let's open it up and look at the HTML view, and notice that they register the desktop portal banner. So let's go ahead and add that. I'm going to copy it and then go over to my telefriend HTML view and place that in there. And then let's take a look at where they actually placed that on the page. You'll notice that they've used kind of this table to arrange things. We're not going to do all that, but we are going to grab this portal banner tag, copy it, and then paste it somewhere at the very top of what we've done. And so we'll have the consistent toolbar look and feel within our edit page as well. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save any changes to the edit links page. Let's go back to our design view of our edit telefriend.aspx. So now we see that our site header user control is here. In our label, let's go ahead and set the text to edit the text of the mail message. We could get fancier with this, but we're not going to. And let's go ahead and make this a 10-row, and let's make the width, or the columns rather, let's go ahead and set that at like 60 so that we make it good and wide. And then we're also going to set one other property, which is text mode multi-line. So we have this nice big text area in which to edit the message. Let's go ahead and hit save. And we could also set the scroll bars and things of that nature. I don't think we'll need to. I think they automatically appear. So let's go ahead and just save that. Next thing we want to do is change the properties of this text box. Let's just call this txt message, and then we'll change the button to btn save, and we'll change the text of this as well to save, and select save on the toolbar. So how we want this to behave is that when the page loads, we want to pull that what's already in the database and display it in our txt message area, and then make any modifications that we want to, and then when we click the Save button, we'll use the update setting method of our component to save that back into the database. I also want to have some way of merging the actual fields from the control into the text message. So you recall we have like the name of the person you're sending to, the email address of the person you're sending to, and then the name of the person this is coming from, and the email address of the person that this is coming from. So we have several fields. I think there's only two that are pertinent, the names, not the email addresses, for our purposes of the mail message. So we won't need this here. What we'll need to use that is in our user control. We're going to need to modify how our user control works because we hard-coded the message into it and integrated it into our message. That would ultimately be sent out using the SMTP wrapper classes in .NET. But we'll get to that in just a moment. For the time being, let's go ahead and add references to our new component in the page load. So let's do this. If not page dot is postback. Forgot what language I was using here for a moment. What we'll do is create an instance of our new component. What do we name that again? I believe we called it SettingsDB. So SettingsDB with no constructor. Setting dot get single setting, and we can create the setting name any way we want. We haven't really called anything yet, so let's call it the tell a friend, just in all lowercase. And this should return back a string to us. So let's string message equals this. And so let's go txt message.text equals message. And then also what we'll do in the btn save is pretty much the same thing. We're going to create an instance of our SettingsDB object. So SettingsDB setting equals new SettingsDB. And then setting dot update setting, and we'll have to pass in the setting name, so we want to make sure that that's the same as what we've used above. Tell a friend, and then the value, which will be text message.text, and we'll go ahead and throw a trim in there. Now, if this was production quality, we'd add some error wrapping around a lot of things. Or exception handling rather. I'm not going to do that right now. Also, what I'm not going to do is include an insert for our SettingsDB. I'm going to assume that there's already data in there, and to accommodate this, I'm going to go to my Server Explorer and enter some data for my settings table. And this is kind of a cheating way to do this, but again, our purpose here is to illustrate how to create the editing page for user control, not how to create a tell a friend control per se. So now we need to test out and see what we have. So to test it, I'll hit the Run button on the toolbar. We'll be in our iBuySpy portal, select guest, sign in, and I'll go to my test tab, and we're going to select the edit mail message. And notice that what comes up is our message blah that I typed in to the database table designer, and what we can do is change that message, and we'll do that in just a moment. Another thing to notice here is that this page doesn't look a whole lot like the rest of the pages on the site, like the employee info tab. The red, the fonts, things of that nature are just different on this page. What happened? Well, we forgot to apply our cascading style sheet. So we'll go back and we'll change that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and make our changes to the mail message. What we'll do is decide on a naming scheme for the text fields that we're going to use within the mail message that will allow us to merge the data in there. So what we'll do is dear, and then we'll do something like this: dear to name, 2 brackets, and then a comma. Check out this site. It's pretty cool. Sincerely, and then from name. Let's go ahead and save that and shut down our browser. Let's go back to our Telefriend ASCX, our actual user control, and let's make a change to the button click event. When they click send, it'll actually send our new mail message. Notice here that we hard-coded the message in our previous incarnation of this. This time what we want to do is pull this information from the database. So what we'll do is add a reference to our settings DB. So settings DB, and then we'll get the actual message. So whoops, we'll have to call it something else. Here we'll call it message text. So string message text equals settings.get single setting, and then we called this tell a friend. So now we should have our text message, and let's go ahead and comment out our body right here. Let's go ahead and use this, and equals the message text. One thing we are going to have to do different though is with the message text, we're going to use the replace and the old value was to name, and then the new value will be the let's see, to name dot text, or dot trim rather, and we'll do the same thing here. Message text dot replace from name, and then from name dot trim. So what this replace function should do is look for every occurrence of to name within the message text that we retrieve from the settings table in the database, and replace it with the name that was actually passed in to our send mail function within our Telefriend ASCX. Let's go ahead and save this and give it a shot. Actually, right before we test it out, I just want to make one quick correction. I realized that a little faux pas. I have to set message text equal to whatever's returned from the replace method of our message text string. So right now, let's go ahead and save this and run it. We'll log in. Just for kicks, let's take a look at our edit mail message. Note that it's saved just like we had it last time. Very cool. Let's go back to the test tab and type in a friend's name, and then your name, and then hit send, and let's see this thing in action. Okay, I have just opened up the email and taken a look, and it says, "Dear Bob, check out this site. It's pretty cool. Sincerely, Scott." So it worked, and we're very happy about this. I encourage you again to take a look at the source code. I'll also include the source code of the stored procs that I created so that you can try this out at home. So I want you to also keep in mind the steps that we took in order to create our edit page for our user control. First of all, within the actual user control itself, notice that we had the edit URL set appropriately to edit telefriend.aspx. That was the first step. Then we also created, if you recall, and try to stay within the spirit of iBuySpy portal by creating a database class that encapsulated the getting and the updating of the values that we were going to use. And then we actually created the edit telefriend page, and in the code behind, we grabbed the message currently in the database and then also allowed updating of that message using our settings.db object. And then we went back and finally went back to our telefriend.ascx, changed it so that it would use that message. And we could have done this again a number of different ways. We chose to save the information in the database, but it's really not limited to that. As you see, you have complete control of how you want to save the information within your user control.